Hi everyone, your host Mr. English is back with you with the series of the videos on SWOT Pakistan. The purpose of the series of the SWOT Pakistan is to highlight all the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats to Pakistan. Let's bring to light the most important factor which would certainly save Pakistan from indulging into instability, deterioration and backwardness. I would like to add one sentence that the history of the developed nations has proved that the progress, prosperity and path to become superpower for a state are not solely based on effective government machinery, rather disciplined contribution by the citizens of the state. Let's begin with our today's topic, which is related to the threat in a SWOT analysis of Pakistan, and the topic is legacy of vulnerability. So let's define what is vulnerability, and because I have the analogy of this topic to the real characters and the agents which are vulnerable for the development of the Pakistan. So vulnerability is the quality of being easily hurt or attacked. Vulnerability comes from the Latin word vulnus, which means wound. So vulnerability is the state of being open to injury. Let's discuss the types of the vulnerability, and keep in mind whatever I'm talking about the vulnerability, it's all about the contextual meaning, which I would definitely imply to the agents and the characters which are responsible and which are vulnerable and responsible for the deterioration and backwardness of Pakistan. So a set of prevailing conditions which adversely affect the community's ability to prevent, mitigate, prepare or respond to a hazard. It is also in the context of the vulnerability. Absence of coping strategies is also the part of the vulnerability and has to be considered in vulnerability assessment. For example, living in a hazard-prone locations like near to sea or river or above the fault lines at the base of the mountains, they all accrue to the sense of the vulnerability. So there are different types of the vulnerability. The first one is physical vulnerability. The physical vulnerability of an area also depends on its geographical proximity to the source and origin of the disaster. For example, if an area lies near the coastlines, fault lines, unstable hills, etc., it makes the area more vulnerable to disaster as compared to an area that is far away from the origin of the disaster. Physical vulnerability includes the difficulty in access to water resources, means of communication, hospitals, police stations, fire brigades, roads, bridges, and exits of a building or an area in the case of disaster. Furthermore, the lack of proper planning and implementation in construction of the residential and commercial buildings results in the buildings that are weaker and vulnerable in the earthquakes, floods, landslides, and other natural catastrophes. Another type of vulnerability is the economic vulnerability. Economic vulnerability of a community can be assessed by determining how varied its sources of income are, the ease of access and the control over means of production. For example, farmland, livestock, irrigation, capital, etc. Adequacy of economic fallback mechanisms and the availability of the natural resources in the area. Another important type of the vulnerability is social vulnerability. A socially vulnerable community has weak family structure, lack of leadership for decision making and conflict resolution, unequal participation in decision making, weak or no community, and the one in which people are discriminated on racial, ethnic, linguistic, and religious basis. Other social factors such as culture, tradition, religion, local norms and values, economic standard, and political accountability also play a vital role in determining the social vulnerability of a community or a state. Social vulnerability to natural phenomena is the greatest among the poorest people in the developing countries owing to the lack of information and resources with which to take the appropriate measures. Within this group, children, women, and the elderly are considered to be the most vulnerable. To reduce social vulnerability, all of the above factors must be addressed, but this requires knowledge and understanding of the local conditions which which can, in most cases, only be provided by the local actors. And the last type of the vulnerability is attitudinal vulnerability, and it is quite common in the state machineries and in the public and private sectors for the functioning of the state. A community which has a negative attitude towards the change and lacks initiative in life resultantly become more and more dependent on external support. They cannot act independently. Their sources of livelihood don't have the variety, lacks entrepreneurship, and don't possess the concept of collectivism. This brings about the disunity and individualism in the society. Thus, they become the victims of conflicts, hopelessness, pessimism, which reduces their capacity of coping with the disaster, and hence they become the most vulnerable agents for a state or society. So the examples of successful leaders and the popular personalities of the world always entice every one of us, and we even praise their efforts. Quite opposite to it, what about the personalities of those who have proved themselves the most vulnerable ones? Because they were terribly collapsed in the achievement of their goals in their lives. Actions are always triggered by the thoughts. If thought is negative, then actions would also be vulnerable and vice versa. For example, if you find there is a field of electricity quite near to us, so we would never draw towards it, as it is declared vulnerable for human life. Quite stunningly, in case of the vulnerable characters and the agents, people prefer to draw near to them, become volunteers for them, ease them in the accomplishment of their evil designs, and this whole state is quite unfortunate with us, and it paves path for the vulnerability. My next video will be about the vulnerability of the sugar mafia in Pakistan. So keep on watching videos related to the SWOT Pakistan. I'm sure this series of the videos would definitely make us more refined characters, and we would definitely be able to contribute most